This is for the leaders, the visionaries, the hope bringers, kindness instigators. This is your place to get loved, poured into, activated, and inspired. Well, good morning. Welcome to Fireside Friday, July 3rd, 2026. We've made it to July. I know that summer is in full swing for all of us, and that has meant changes in rhythms and expectations and um, lots of heat. I hope that you have been able to enjoy some of the heat or find glimmers of how to enjoy it. Maybe it means also getting in the pool some or in the yard with a sprinkler or hose. I was kind of struck thinking about that yesterday. Someone had written a post about thinking about their childhood and what summer meant for them, and it felt far more simple than it has felt to her in her adulthood, to try and make a magical summer for her children. And she was just kind of remarking, it felt like we were kind of just wilding out in our yards with our hoses, popsicles, all of the things. And it felt very nostalgic to me to remember and think on just the simplicity. Of our childhood. And for some of us too, I'm also being reminded that sometimes our childhood wasn't so simple. And with less structure and less support from school, meant also very hard things in your home as well. So sometimes summer is also not fun to remember for some of us. So I'm just honoring and recognizing each wherever we fall in this span, because there does feel like today there is kind of a mixture of the joy of simplicity, but also nostalgia and grief for what has been, whether it's nostalgia, or more grief. Wherever you're listening, it has felt like there's kind of not a divide, but a continuum. And it does feel important to acknowledge both. And all week long, when I've been sitting with what is coming forward for Fireside, it has continued to be this message of um, a reminder that each and every season and phase of our life, whether it felt simple or whether it still feels really hard, no matter what, throughout our life, each and every version and season that we have undergone have brought us to the moment that we're inside of. And that each and every season has served a purpose. I know we've talked about that many different firesides, but this feels more like a kind of reverence or recognition that gets to happen right now. Like almost like we're turning a corner, we're passing into a threshold together, and there is a conversation here that I was going to say deserves, but you don't deserve it. You can have it if you would like it. There's an invitation. That's a better word. There's an invitation right now as we turn this threshold. It feels kind of global to me. That's the only way I can describe it. But we're kind of turning a corner and things are continuing to change. And that momentum of the horse here is still here. So there has been a lot of change. There will continue to be change. But there is this point as we turn this corner, where there is some unresolved or unrecognized moments from the versions of ourselves that we've been before that deserves your time and energy and reflection and contemplation today and into the days that you hear this message. Um, because I feel like, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, it's been interesting to notice as I've tried to release productivity as a measure of status or health or um, like something that is my measuring stick or my report card, like how much did you get done and how much did you do and what did it look like, and those measurements of um, not even qualitative output, but output, that there was something output. I could look back and see all of the things I'd produced, and to remove myself from that report card and instead to be in deep conversation and connection and relationship with myself over and what would I like my report card to even say? What would I like my life to have been measured by? What am I measuring my life by? And I found very recently, I kind of came through something just kind of shifted for me. Is almost like a veil lifted. And this veil, whether or not I could articulate it or know it was there, it's been there for a couple years. And something energetically shifted where that felt like it lifted. And almost immediately, in those first days where I felt more energized and more alive, more allowed, one of the first things I did was turn back in judgment to the woman for the last couple years who survived that veil, who endured that veil, but also who sat with that veil. And I was kind of struck with without that woman who held space with and for me, my own woman sat with me. I wouldn't, I don't think that veil would have lifted. I don't think that I would have the momentum and the energy and the activation and the switch into that momentum that I've been craving because that momentum felt more like my natural rhythm, more like something I recognized. And that veil, that heaviness, is not something that growing up felt fun. Sadness, slowness, stillness were not things that I was taught to honor in my home. Yes, maybe moments and pockets of reverence, but as someone too, as a child, I loved sitting, reading books, watching movies, listening to music. And yes, there was some movement in that, but for me, I had spent a lot of time like in story and conversation and the distilling that. And that has not changed for me. But I felt really like an outlier in my family or made wrong for that in different ways because that is not the continuum that they were on. And even in the last couple years that my dad was alive, it was actually a conversation that he and I got to have. Where we had to have, not had to, but we had a moment where I was able to ask him some questions. And he basically also took ownership and apologized for the ways that he missed me inside of the things that felt so important to me. But to him, it didn't feel like it was moving the needle. It wasn't producing for our family. It wasn't productive in all of these ways. We kind of miss the journey for the goal or whatever the thing is we're trying to achieve. And it's not lost on me that this is the message that's coming forward for us on our 250th Eve anniversary as a country, because I at least feel like there has been so much emphasis in a lot of our schooling and in our metrics in business and patriarchal influence that has asked us to measure our output as if that is all that matters. Like, doesn't matter what churns, doesn't matter what dies, doesn't matter what we sacrifice. As long as we reach that goal, we reach that quarter, that expansion, that growth. But the reality is that continuous growth is not sustainable in nature. Nature has seasons of rest. It has seasons of darkness. It has seasons of stillness to produce more life. We're in the full swing of life here in the summer. But in the winter, when things get still, when the plants rest, when the roots get to rest, right? Because they're not having to draw in so much, at least I think. I would think, I'm like, what do roots actually do in the winter? As I'm sharing something like I don't actually know. So I'll own that. I'm like, I'm actually not sure what roots do in winter, but I think that they take a break because there's not as much light, there's not as much production happening, and the conditions aren't right for that anyway. The conditions are prime for rest. And so this isn't necessarily about honoring rest as much as it is about I felt like we're being asked to really honor the different seasons that we have gone through in iterations of ourself to bring flowers to those places in us and those seasons, even when they weren't fun, to recognize in gratitude that they did serve and are serving as almost the shoulders that we stand upon today. And that feels really, really important because, again, if we always have production, output, whatever the thing is at the forefront of our mind, I fear that we also miss the simplicity of the moment in front of us and the sweetness of recognition of, again, what we have already accomplished. I think it was Tony Robbins once who I was doing this like online seminar. This was years ago, and he asked people not to create a to-do list, but to create a to-done list. Because so often, again, we're focusing on what comes next and not necessarily appreciating and grounding into what we have already accomplished, what we have already passed through, what we have already enjoyed or experienced or grieved or are actively in those emotions with whatever season that we're inside of currently. And so I feel like in the next few days, it might be encouraging to create a to-done list, or even a way for you to think about. I was kind of struck with an exercise as well. This may feel better or a different angle for some of you. That if I ask you to think about a range, so like from birth, we'll call that zero, all the way to the age that you are now. Pick a number, like whatever number pops into your head, between zero and the age that you are. So for me, it'd be 37, and the number I got was 17. So whatever number came forward to you in that scale, there's also an invitation to revisit that moment, that time and space. So for me, I'm going to call that when I was 17 years old, to think about what was my life like? What was that year? I'd have to spend some more time really kind of anchoring into that. But there is something there that maybe could be appreciated or drawn from, or maybe a message that that season of your life is meant for even now. Because I don't believe that those things are accidents. I don't believe that you're listening to this message now and not receiving something that you need, even if it is friction or you don't like the way I'm doing the cadence or whatever the thing is, whatever the thought. Each and every interaction and relationship that we are entering into, each and all at all times, I believe, is producing something in us and for us and calling us into, again, witness, into relationship. So what does that number look like for you? What was it, was it when you were a little child? What was that time like in your life? And there may be parts of that that deserve just witnessing allowance of grief or sadness. There may be tears that come forward that surprise you, but I promise that if you will allow that space and time of recognition for yourself, you will feel more connected, more grounded, even in the present today, that there is something there for you inside of that. Um, and it's always a journey, always like a question mark that becomes, at least for me, in some of these exercises and activities that come forward. It's so interesting to see what we find. And if you're new also to leaning more into that trust of synchronicity, of provision, of trusting yourself and what you create in your imagination or what's brought forward for you. I just want to remind all of us that each and everything that exists in our life first existed as a random thought or an idea. And our imagination, our creativity, our artistry is all unique to each and every one of us. And whatever is coming up for you is meant for you in this moment. Even if it, like I said, I'm getting a lot of like, ooh, that feels uncomfy. So if there are feelings of like, well, I don't really like that, but what would that look like to just sit with that and be with that, to allow that thing to be with you? Whatever it is, it could be a thought. I don't like that age. I felt so awkward. I felt so whatever the thing is, but recognizing too that no matter the awkwardness, no matter the joy, no matter the simplicity, that each and every iteration, like I've said, has brought us to this moment where we are. And there could be also ways where you recognize new forms of gratitude for yourself, for things that maybe you've came through that you're like, wow, I really minimized a lot of that. There's another story that's kind of coming forward for me now, so I feel like it feels important. I was listening to I can't remember his name, Peter something, and he was working with a woman who was kind of she was telling the story about how she was unwanted, and he was curious about this story and narrative that he had about herself, or that she had about herself. And he was like, "Tell me where this story started." And the she goes, "Well, I was unplanned for. I what did she say? She said, I was the baby or the child that was unexpected." And then she started to go, and he said, "No, stay right here." He was like, "How do you know that you were unexpected?" And she said, "Well, originally, I think she was a twin. Originally, the ultrasound that they'd received, her parents, was only for one baby. Somehow they missed the second baby. And so she was completely a surprise at birth and delivery. And I feel like that was something that her father also often mentioned, like, well, we weren't counting on you." And so he really kind of broke that down with her. And he was like, "So this has been going on." I think she was 44. He was like, "So for 44 years, you have carried the story that you were unexpected." And he kind of led her through a series of questions. And what it ultimately came down to was that she felt like a burden. She felt like an extra need in that household. And that is the way that she has been kind of living with guilt around something that was that hers to hold or not. How was it serving and supporting an identity that she was inside of? What does that look like now? Because even in asking, like, what does it look like to release that story, to allow some of that to leave and to actually see yourself instead as a burden? What if you were actually a surprise and a gift? What if that was actually you were this unexpected surprise? And you could see her shoulders like drop. She could breathe deeper. There are also moments in our life, and like maybe that number for you takes you back to an incident that is not something you want to revisit. And I completely honor that with and for you. But I do encourage you that if in some way you could find a place to sit with that in a way that feels honoring to you. You don't have to push any part of you any further than you want to go, but maybe too you might have more insight if you would. And for some of you, again, this is going to sit with you now that you've heard it for a little while. That's okay. When you are ready, it will be there for you. You don't have to do anything that you're not ready to do, but there is an invitation there, and there is a lot of healing, reconciliation, more peace, more alignment, and more interconnectedness between your own experience in life and your relationship now, with yourself moving forward as we turn this corner, that is going to be important, foundational, and enriching to your life. I'm receiving that very strongly. Okay, let's move to our card. So today our card is from the Divine Feminine Oracle, and we have Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Empress of Protection. I am safe and divinely protected. I am held in love at all times. I kind of love that there's this red, white, and blue happening for us too. Um, Our Lady of Guadalupe is the emblazoned emblem of the uniquely powerful protection of a mother's love. Her image is believed to have miraculously appeared within the tilma, or cloak, of Saint Juan Diego. She appeared to him 4 times, the first of which was on December 9th, 1531. She spoke to Juan in his native Nahuatl language and asked him to build a church in her honor. They were standing on the Tepeyac Hill outside Mexico City, where the Spanish had recently destroyed a temple to the mother goddess Tontzin, an Aztec goddess of love. Bear with my really poor pronunciation. Juan Diego tried to convince the archbishop of the authenticity of the apparition, but to no avail. He asked Guadalupe to give him a sign that would help convince the archbishop of her identity. She appeared to Juan a final time and told him to collect the Castilian roses, not native to Mexico, that were in bloom at the top of the hill. He gathered the roses in his cloak, and when they fell before the archbishop, they could both see the emblem of Our Lady of Guadalupe inscribed on the inside of his cloak. Her image on Juan Diego's cloak has become Mexico's most popular religious and cultural symbol. It hangs above the high altar in the Basilica of Guadalupe in Mexico City. The basilica is the most visited Catholic pilgrimage site in the world and the world's third most sacred site. Its preservation and its mysterious creation have been a fascination for scholars and art historians for centuries. It seems to be defying the laws of nature, both by not decaying the way a natural substance should, and by having been created in what seems to be one fell swoop rather than with multiple brushstrokes. This now infamous image is worn as a symbol of protection from banners in the army during the Mexican War of Independence, and on the backs of migrant workers to shield them from being whipped, to modern t-shirts and tattoos to protect devout Catholics and gang members with the exceptional love of the divine feminine. When your soul selects her card, what is outside of us is also within us. Even if we have never experienced a mother's love, the true force of that loving protection exists within us, so we can give it to ourselves. When St. Juan Diego was concerned that the archbishop would not believe him and was racing to meet Our Lady of Guadalupe, she appeared suddenly and said the most beloved phrase in the apparition story, a phrase that is inscribed on the entrance to her basilica. No estoy yo aquí que soy tu madre. Am I not here? I who am your mother. The energy of a mother's love can travel to meet you anywhere, whether within the world or within your own heart. The message is that she is here. You are mothered, but the message is also to ask for what you need. St. Juan Diego asked Our Lady of Guadalupe for a sign that proved her identity and existence. She gave him her image emblazoned inside his cloak, one that has been venerated and considered holy ever since because he asked for her assistance. We are ennobled with free will. The divine needs our request for assistance in order to enter our lives. All we need to do is to assume the simplicity, the heart, and the humility of a child and ask for a sign that she is here. We will be met with more love than we could ever imagine, and love is always the greatest and most powerful energy of protection. Soul voice meditation. Do I experience the love of a divine mother within me? And the intention of the card, I am safe and divinely protected. I am held in love at all times. What a beautiful card. I also, I was kind of struck when I read this section about divine pilgrimages. You know, we have these holy sites in our world that often people and believers will make and take significant treks to be able to go and visit that site. This feels like, again, a nod to um, that moment in time that you thought of before. Take that sacred pilgrimage to that moment, to that year, to that memory, and see and know that you are mothered there, that you are divinely cared for, that you are nurtured there, that you are not ever apart from love, and that you are never separate from it, that you always have that divine love on your side, carrying you forward. And there is nothing that you can face in your life that will separate you from it. I believe that. I don't believe that it can be lost. We can feel lonely. We can feel far from love at times, but each and every time, I think that we can ask for that sign that we are carried, that we are loved. So maybe too, this is a moment that you get to create something for yourself that feels like Guadalupe's image. What is it? Or maybe you don't know what it is yet. Juan Diego didn't know what it was going to be. What is it going to look like? Ask or see what you receive and start seeing if you notice that in your life in ways where love is meeting you, showing up for you. Um, Flying into a nest next to you. Um, for a lot of us listening to, at least those of you who I have close relationships with, birds are really, really divine messengers for us. They constantly are around. Their songs bring us comfort. There are different birds that mean significant things to us. So maybe that's a bird for you. Maybe even now you're like, I've never thought about a bird. And so see what comes forward. See how life meets you where you are. I'm sending you with so much love today. You are always loved and cared for, and you can trust that what you've received is meant for you. And again, let all the rest just fall away. We'll see you next week.